Yes, good evening, Chris. Thank you for joining me tonight.
It's a pleasure. Pleasure. Always a pleasure to see you, my friend.
Oh, dude, I'm excited about this. So this is the first live video Zoom chat that we have ever done. I asked Chris to do it with me because I just thought, who better to do this? Because for myself, I had never been, or no, for myself, I never would have been a professional chainsaw carver or a chainsaw carver if it wasn't for this man right here. We were on Saw Dogs together, which is now running on Amazon Prime. And just remember, it's fully scripted. I play an asshole, but I was good at it. And from that, I fell in love. I fell in love with chainsaw carving. And well, if it wasn't for Chris, I probably would have never kept doing it because no one really gave me the time of day.
Yeah.
So for that, my friend, I thank
you. So
you.
the world can blame me for that one. Yeah.
So yeah. With these Zoom
Putting
chats,
a target on my back right there, man. That's great.
I like that. That's good. Well, it took a long time for me to get the target off my back as being the guy who broke the head off the eagle in episode 1. So
I was trying to finish this piece. I needed to go up to carve the wings, to do the detail and the tips, and I just grabbed the closest guy, and it happened to be Ryan.
So
Can't really see.
What was that like anyway? I mean, this is I like to interview the interviewer, man. So how does that feel, like the whole situation where I always wonder about that, like how you must have felt like when, I mean, did you walk into it knowing they were gonna set you up and be like, hey man, do the stupid shit? Did you know that because I mean, I get it that you were an actor. I mean, I get that 100%. I think a lot of people don't realize that you walked into that as an actor, and here you are, you know, you're in this cool stuff, and you know, you're starting to meet people and see, you know, maybe see a different light to it, but all of a sudden you're like, was it a snap to reality sometimes when they're like, hey, go do this, go fuck this up, you know what I mean, all that shit?
Yeah, man, you know, it was crazy because I had spent 10 years in LA. I literally tried to be an actor. It failed, but I was like a actor. I would do like bit roles, and then I came back to Canada and went to a Starbucks and auditioned for, not even auditioned. I heard there was a casting going on in Squamish, which was my hometown, and they were looking for an apprentice for a chainsaw carving show. And I literally had no idea how to run a chainsaw. I didn't really know what I was getting into. And to be honest, like when they auditioned, they basically said, do you mind being an asshole? And I said, no. How much am I getting paid? And they said, a good number. And I said, okay, cool. And then, you know, when I went on set, it was like insane because the first day was Ben Risney and Pete Ryan, and Ben literally carved that eagle out in, I don't know, 2.5 hours, and the producers shit their pants because we had 5 days to do an episode, and Ben Risney had literally just carved a 10-foot eagle, and they didn't know what to do because they thought it would take them all week. So then they came up with the premise, okay, you need to break the head off the eagle. And I was like, break the head off that? I don't even know what the fuck that guy just did, but that was awesome. And I don't really want to do that. And they basically, we fought about it for like 2 hours, and they were like, okay, if you don't do it, you're fired. You've been on camera twice. We don't give a shit. And I was like, game on. Let's go. And
there it is.
And then from that point on,
that's some of that stuff I think a lot of people didn't realize, you know what I mean, which is cool. I think it was pretty cool. I mean, that's what it was. It was a job, right?
Oh, totally, 100%. I mean, I remember like the first few episodes was, you know, the monster bar with Paul Fernette and Pete Ryan and Mark Culp and Samadowski. I started to kind of get it then. And then I like did my first carving with the skateboard, and then they burned it, and then I lost my shit on that. But then really at the end was when you and I, so Chris and I, we were not on camera, and I was watching you, and I tried to carve the tentacle in that episode, or on just in the background, and you were like, you had you were just you, because you don't like talking very much. You hadn't said a word to me the whole time. And you just carved your ass off for that like 2 weeks. And literally, like, you know, when you came over and said, hey, do you want to carve this tentacle? I was like, hell yeah, let's do it. Because I was trying to copy you from like 100 yards away. And
Right.
and then, you know, then Ollie, the producer, walked by, or Alex or whatever, and was like, oh no, you guys can't do this. You got to do this on
Right.
camera.
Right.
And then it was what? We waited 5 hours before the fucking time they even let us.
Yeah. Well, I think if I remember right, they were filming something else, or I think it was 2 other things were going on. We were there. That's why we were there alone.
Yep.
And it was just getting, you know, it was just, God, it was so much of that was just ridiculous, where it was like, they didn't want anything happening when they weren't there. And then they weren't there. And then it was like, I mean, I remember like Jason Emmons and I like sneaking in the middle of the night, like we act like we left and everybody split, and then we go back, you know what I mean, and carve later, just because it was like, fuck, you couldn't get anything done. You know what I mean? I mean, you're getting like maybe 15 minutes of work for every hour that you were, you know, on set. And it was pretty cool, you know, it was pretty cool.
It was an amazing experience. I mean, I look back on it now and I think about, it's weird. Like, to me, I have flashbacks of things that I would never even have thought of had I not become a carver. I remember like Jeff told me once, he was like, you'd be good at this. Jeff Samadowski, he was like, you'll be really good at this if you stick with it. And him and Mark, and he's like, I look at the perspective here, and he was telling me these things, and like 3 years later, it was like, I was like, oh,
right,
that's what he meant.
Right.
You know, so it was an interesting way to kind of become a chainsaw carver, and actually like not even be a carver,
of course.
but then fall in love with it. It was crazy.
Well, that's the piece. That's what I think is so unique about that situation for you specifically, is because, I mean, how many of us, how many of the, you know, the chainsaw carving world, so many of us are simply exposed to what is there. I mean, if there's a carver in town, if there's a show close to us, whatever it was, like that's what happened with me, being, you know, 20 minutes from the Reed Sports show that Bob and Cindy started, you know, and that was where my first exposure to it came. But still, you're at the mercy of, which I think is interesting as an instructor, you know, you're at the mercy of the teachers, and the teachers in that situation so many times are just the people that are there. But here's this actor, Ryan Cook, who literally, you know, first exposure, you know, and they've wrestled up these 12 amazing artists, you know, to do this show, and here you are, that's your first set. And that was, you know, it's such a unique situation. I think is really, you know, it's one of a kind. It's one of a kind.
So how about yourself though? Like, how did you even get into carving? Because you come from a cooking background, right?
I was working in a casino, and there was about 5 sous chefs, and the exec had a complete nervous breakdown and took off. And I had never even seen one in real life, and this is before the time of smartphones, right? And the director came down, and he was like, we need this ice carving for tomorrow for this event, you know what I mean? And chef's not going to be here ever again, so who's doing it? I remember thinking, I remember thinking, I was like, I remember talking to a guy about ice carving before, and it was about 5 years earlier. I was hitchhiking through Tennessee, Cooksville, a college town, and I met this dude, and he was an ice carver. So I was like thinking to myself while I'm looking at my director, I'm like, man, I think I've heard of that, man. I think I get that. You use a chainsaw, right? And he goes, great. He goes, great, Chris, you got it, man. And I turned around and all the other sous chefs had split, and that was it, man. And that was how it all started, you know.
And did you just start using a chainsaw like a regular old chainsaw, no carving bar? Just
no, it's a brutal chainsaw. It's an electric, you know, 16-inch bar, you know, just, you know, I'm pretty sure it said pool on it somewhere. And when I, you know, into the freezer, you know, I plastic wrapped the whole freezer, you know what I mean? It took 4 hours to do this damn thing. And it was a salmon, and it just looked like shit. It was one of those old blocks. It was one of the old blocks. They weren't even clear. They had that brown stripe through the center, just total shit. It's just total shit. And,
sweet. And how did you then convert yourself into wood? You said you went to Reedsport with Bob King and Cindy King, and
well,
is that how you got into it?
Yeah, not with them, but that was their show. They started that show.
And that's in Reedsport, Oregon?
Yeah, Reedsport, Oregon, right, yeah. So so that's about 20 minutes from where I live.
Oh, cool.
And yeah, from where the casino was. And I had never even heard of the show. But how that actually transitioned was I did an ice carving. Now, mind you, you got to fast forward about 2 years. I did like 2 or 3 ice carvings that first year. It was like that salmon, and then I did like an ice cream cone and some other bullshit. And then the second year, I think I did 6, and it was brutal, man. It was brutal. I hated it. I freaking hated it, man. I mean, I couldn't use an angle grinder, blew up in the freezer. I figured I had to carve ice in the freezer. This angle grinder blew up. We found a piece of it in the fucking prime rib. I mean, shit, if that thing would have hit me, it would have went right through my belly. And then, the die grinders, I'd never used a die grinders or a Dremel for that matter. I mean, I'm a city boy. I have no idea what I'm doing, and then anyway, to say the least, I mean, the best I had was the chainsaw, and it was still just rough as shit. And I did 6, and then I got frustrated with it, Yeah. I got pissed off because you gotta understand though, for the younger guys coming up right now, you gotta understand at this time, I didn't have a smartphone. And we didn't have access. It's hard to put your mind into that at that time, that there just wasn't any access. You couldn't look it up. We were still using encyclopedias and shit. You know what I'm saying? And like, what are you going to do? Look it up in the dictionary? So, So anyway, I got 3 days with this guy, taught me how to use tools, taught me how to do a template, came home. And the next year I did 265 ice sculptures that next year. And
that's insane.
That was the year. That was the year that I would honestly say at that point, I was obsessed with it. That became an intense obsession at that point. I was doing anything I could to do it. Matter of fact, the casino, because I was a sous chef there, I had signing capability up to $500.
Yeah.
The blocks at the time were costing us about 120, and they didn't want me spending more than $200 a week on it so I was doing ice sculptures for the buffets,
Yeah.
They didn't want me spending more than $200, so they were like, so I would order, because I had signing capability of 500, I would order 5 blocks, like a month in theoretically, like as far as they knew, I had done 4 sculptures. I'd actually done like 25, and they were like, God damn, you're getting so good so fast. They
That's
just didn't,
insane.
they didn't know. Yeah.
Well, that's the one thing about you that, like, I think that, people who know you in the carving world, like myself, is your work ethic is just absolutely like second to none. I don't think I've ever met anyone who is more driven and more focused when it comes time to like prepare. You're one of the most decorated carvers that there is in the world. I mean, it is absolutely unreal. Like, you've won Chet wins what, 6 times?
4.
4 times. You've
4
won
times,
the Husky Cup.
4 times first and second.
You've won Reedsport. You've won, Hope. Every competition that I've ever been at with you, I kind of want to hear about your preparation. So well, let's go back. Let's quickly tell me a little bit about how you got into the wood. But then once you did that, I want to kind of know really like your thought process in creating design and even, you don't have to tell me everything, but maybe give a glimpse to how you go about creating, like, you and I know exactly what is going on with your design process, because you've taught me everything I know. But tell me a little bit about like wood, and then let's get into design.
Okay. So a couple weeks in, I'm the banquet chef, and I'm doing a banquet for the guy that's now the chief of the tribe that I'm working for. And at the time, he was one of the coordinators for the tribe of their events, and I was the chef, of course, like I just said. And he and I are doing this event together, and I do an ice sculpture of an eagle, right? And for his event, and everybody loves it, everybody just loves it. And of course, the same thing, looking back, you're like, oh my God, please just burn the picture, right? And
you got to send
anyway,
me that. So
everybody loves it and shit. Well, the chief comes up to me after the event, and he's got this kind of stern look on his face, and he's like, he goes, I want to talk to you about this ice sculpture. I'm like, wow. I'm like, man, I'm making waves here, bro. You know what I'm saying? Anyway, he tells me he doesn't like it. And I'm like, what? I'm like, what? Whoa, whoa, whoa. So I got to step back. No, I'm a chef, you mind you. I'm a chef. So, I mean, when somebody says it and like something I set out, I'm pretty concerned. So I'm like, I'm sorry. Sorry you don't like it. I said, what is it that, you know, that you didn't like? And he says, I don't like seeing talent put into something that's melting and no one's going to be able to enjoy after tonight. And I was like, wow, holy shit. You know, a totally different perspective. And the guy's an amazing person. So it was, cool. You know, it was a serious conversation, and the guy was absolutely serious. And he looked at me and he said, I want you to do a sculpture for my next event, which will be in 6 months. And I want it out of wood. And he told me he was going to pay me $500 for it. And he said, I have 6 months to figure out how to do it. And that was it. So, I mean, the interesting thing about this story in the end is just that I was literally told to carve ice. And then about six months later, I was told to carve wood. And that was it. And I can't take credit for either one. I really can't, you know, and everybody talks about how I love the stories, man. I saw this and I heard that and I fell in love with it. And I don't have it. I just don't have that story. I have literally, I was told to do it. That was it. I was told to do it.
So being told to do it, I mean, you went from being told to do it to then becoming, I mean, you fast tracked your way into carving and you fast tracked your way onto the scene. I mean, I remember when I hear the stories of you coming onto the chainsaw carving competition scene and literally like blowing the socks off of people right away. And I'm sure you look back at it now, as most carvers do, and cringe. But so how did you begin to kind of like create your design process? I'm going to mute myself and you just go.
Okay. Where my design process really came from, because you have to understand, I was competing as a wood carver in the summer.
Yeah.
But in the winter, I was competing as an ice carver, and it was full. I mean, and that's what a lot of people don't realize. The ice community didn't see the wood, and the wood community didn't see the ice. And the time that I wasn't competing each year was September, October, November. That was basically it. Those were the 3 months when I didn't have a competition. So when I went a couple years in that wood carving, trying to do what the wood carvers were doing, I actually hit a point where I remember coming home and telling my wife, I was so pissed, so frustrated. I remember the competition vividly, and I was going to quit. I was done with it. I just couldn't stand it anymore because I felt like, I think I got like 10th place, and now I just feel like a spoiled brat because of it. But I got like 10th place at Reedsport, and I was just so furious over it. And it wasn't because I wasn't angry because I thought I deserved more than 10th. I want to make that clear. I knew I thought I was lucky to get 10th. What I just couldn't find, I couldn't find it. You know, I just couldn't see it, what it was that I was trying to do. I couldn't. And, you know, it's just, I didn't have my style. I didn't have a style. That was it. I was just copying. And now I'm a couple years in and trying to figure out what I'm doing. That next year I went up to Alaska. I was with a friend, Dean Murray. It was my first year in Alaska. Yeah. Amazing guy. Anyway, he asked me to go to Alaska with him. So I went. So I really started at that point to see big sculpture in this dismantle and reassemble kind of concept, right? Doing pieces completely finished, a piece, you know, like a tentacle, for instance, you know, doing that as just this piece itself separate. And I remember in my mind, I'm like, how do you do that? How's that even possible to get the things to match up? And what if the tentacle's too big and the body's too small and all this shit? And I'm like, and of course, fast forward now, I'm like, it's just not that hard. You overthink it. You know what I mean? It's more of a larger vision, you know? And that was really the first exposure to it. Fast forward to the summer, and here we are in wood competition. And this is the first time I looked at a log and I was like, I'm going to fucking cut this thing in half. and I'm going to stick this tail on this thing. I'm going to make this 7-foot log, 16-foot sculpture.
Nice.
You know,
Yeah, that makes sense.
And I remember telling him, I said, it was Star Wars, lizard from Star Wars called Bego.
Nice.
One of the newer Star Wars, you know. I can't remember if it's Clone Wars or some shit. Anyway, we decided to do it, and we did it, and it was the first time I had done that. It was the first time I really enjoyed what I was doing, you know, in that competition. And I realized at that point, maybe I didn't realize it, but I could feel it, that this was it. This is what I needed to do. I needed to do ice carving in wood, and I needed to do it big. And that was the only thing that made sense to me. And it clicked, and it absorbed, it consumed me at that point.
Totally.
And, you know, and you know, the story goes, you know what I'm saying? What are you going to, you know, and then it, you know.
And that's really telling to like how you have developed your style. I mean, when you see a Chris Foltz piece, they are so dynamic and they are so you that it's there's few carvers in the world that you can look at and go, boom, I know that guy. Boom, I know that guy. I mean,
right.
A lot of carvers can do that, but a lot of carvers are always trying to emulate what they see. And what I think is really cool about you is you created your own style, and not only creating your own style, you pushed the outer limits of everything that had been done in wood carving, and as far as competitive carving goes, because I'm sure there's lots of attachments.
Right.
People can comment in the comments of bullshit if they want, but at this
right,
in my eyes, to me, I think that, you know, that first night when I watched the tentacles in that big pop can of a old growth redwood you had, and you turned it on its side and cut a slab off, and then
He did one side and cut through, and then came up and met his same cut on the other side, and pretty much nailed it spot on.
Basically put the lady on top and had tentacles freaking flying out. I'll post a picture right now so you guys can see what I'm talking about. But it just blew my mind. And right there, I was like, I remember when you let me carve that tentacle, getting back to Saw Dogs in that last episode of the series, I remember just being like, fuck, I remember going to the party, and this party was wild. Like it was the owner of the Cirque du Soleil and Whistler, and and I sat by that tentacle the whole night, just like, yeah, I carved that. They're like, you carved that? I'm like, no, I carved that tentacle. And it's like,
good, man.
That was awesome. And that really kind of, for me, it was like what inspired me to continue on. And there was a lot of new carvers that are coming up. Like, do you see the change? Do you like the change in what's happening with chainsaw carving right now?
Absolutely. I think it's great. I think it's amazing. You know, stepping into, I remember Chetwin, and that was when I did the Wolverine.
I love that piece.
Yeah, I know we got a couple pictures of that. It was one of my favorite pieces. No seams whatsoever, right? They're still in that time for myself. And I saw Karita was next to me, and he did this giant samurai, and he did the sword separate. And then Ken Sheen, I'm pretty sure, he carved a tree. It was like this tree with the face and all that, but he stuck a branch on, you know, to get outside. So, I mean, and I agree with you 1,000%. And then you have like, the list goes on. There was so much seaming going on at the time.
Yeah.
And I saw it, and at the time, though, it was kind of, especially in the States, it wasn't represented well, and people didn't like it, and you'd get knocked down for it, honestly. I mean, if you did seaming, you knew your score was going to get knocked down. That was how competition was back then. And so that first year was definitely set up like that. Now, the second year I went back is when I did the octopus in Chetwin. And before I left for that show, I had 2 designs, and I wasn't going to do the octopus. I had a completely inside the log design because I hadn't quite broken out of that yet. And I was going to do that. Yeah, but I had this other design. I had this octopus, and I had seen that in Alaska from Junichi. Junichi and Heather Bryce had done it in the single block, and I was through the forest with Dean, and that was that year. And I had seen it, and I designed an octopus with that, in that concept, and seeing what they did with that ice. So I designed one of my own. And then, and I had it already, and I was like, well, I'm never going to get a log that's big enough to do this and all that shit. You know what I'm saying? Because at the time, that was still how I was thinking. And sure as shit, I drew a huge fucking log. I mean, I think it was like 48 inches thick, and it was number 8. And I remember being at the dinner party that night, and I was so stressed out because I was like, I knew when I drew number 8 and it was 48 inches thick, I was like, and that was my template size. I was like, if I don't do this right now, I'm a big fucking piece of shit. And that was it. And I had this it was a battle with myself that night. And I decided that was what I was going to do. And I tore the other design up, threw it away, and did it.
But still, that piece kind of like changed the game. And, you know, you fast forward to the Minotaur, to Killing Time, which is like the most insane piece. Like when you're thinking about a piece like that, how do you really come up with the idea to, how do you know like how you're going to get each number? Like, I don't even ask this question. How do you know how to take the log circumference and then go, I need this slab here to go bang, bang, bang. I'm going to put clocks here. I'm going to do the body of the scorpion here. And like, how mentally did you figure out that process? Like, is it just like the ice thing? Like for me, I still can't wrap my head around how you do that. And is it all in your planning?
It's all in the planning. Yeah. I mean, it's
all in the planning.
I think maybe some people don't realize if you're going to do that, you know, if you're going to have 50 pieces like Killing Time, you know, you don't walk into it. You can't walk into it without knowing where every piece is going to come from. And that's it.
Yeah.
Back in the day, I would do a single design, and I would do templates at 3 different sizes. You know what I mean? Making sure that I had what I needed. You know, I remember taking rolls of paper, 5 pounds of paper. I had so much fucking templates with me, you know, on an airplane and shit. You know what I mean?
Wow.
Because I didn't know of course you didn't know what size the log was. Now with ice carving, you know exactly what you're going to get. But with the wood carving, you can't plan it out so easy, you know, and you have all these little things to deal with. And I think with some people, maybe it's hard to understand, is that there has to be a perfect design, or as close as you can get, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But you have to be able to watch it crumble and figure out how to deal with it, you know? And I think that's the piece that's so damn hard for people. It's so hard for people to do it, even when they try it. I've seen so few people in the wood carving community be able to take that concept and actually make it work. And what I know the issue is, because I dealt with it myself, is for instance, here's a basic issue.
I know where you're going with this.
Basic issue. End of day one, you know as well as I do what happens when you're going to do a design like that, because you do them too. You know what I mean? And you've taken that concept out of ice carving, whether it was me or whoever else. But you know the feeling. You know the feeling on day one, giving everything you've got, all that effort, all that design, all that time. And you step back when they blow the whistle after 10 hours in Chetwynd, and you step back and your piece is in 50 pieces on the ground. You have no height. It looks like you literally went backwards. And then you're right next to somebody who's 12 feet high, and they've got the face totally carved out and all this other shit. You see what I'm saying? You know the feeling. Yeah. And it's detrimental. It crushes you. It kills you.
It's very challenging. And you know, I remember one thing you told me when you're doing these designs is that you have to commit. And if you're going to commit to a design, you cut it right on the line. Like, you got your template, you take a perfect profile, and like whatever that is, and you put it on that fucking log, and you spray paint it, and you got your outline. You get as close to that line as you can, because that's what, that's what is perfect. Your proportions are right. So stay within that and you're good. And I remember the
Absolutely.
first year I did Chetwin, it was hilarious. It was, you know, you had been mentoring me for so many years and I was just like, I was ready. And it was the one time I let you do my design. But well, yeah, you did my design because I was so nervous and I was like, okay, I'm going to come up and I'm going to do this and I'm going to do the horse fly. And I'll show you a picture of that right now. And I remember it was the first and only time I ever let anyone ever give me a design.
Oh
But it was
yeah, the horsefly that we do.
and it was, I remember just doing it and being like so lost because I've never done templates and I'd never done anything like it. And I was just like, what the fuck? How is this happening to me? And then finally I come to you and I remember you because you are a fierce competitor. And I remember, and I tell the story often is came to you for help and you looked at me and you were like, yo, Ryan, I got to feed my family. Figure it out. And I was like, holy shit. And I remember just being like, okay, I got to figure it out. And I remember I went back and I sat back and I looked and I figured it out. And then I remember like I got through it. I was proud of the piece. I was super stoked. And I remember like look back at that piece now and it's just like, oh my God, I cringe. But I remember like I go up to you and at the end of the comp and I'm like, yo, you think I got a chance? And you were like, no. And I was like, seriously? And you're like, nah, dude. And I was like, okay.
You take it so well. You take it so well, though. That's what, man. That's
you
what
know what it did, though.
You know, that's what.
To me, it motivated me. I mean, for myself, I was like, okay, fuck it, I can't. And I remember I asked the judges. I said, what place did I get? I got 12th place. And I was like, oh, I'm so mad. And then next year, I was like, okay, I'm gonna come back. I'm going to do better. And then fast forward to next year, I got 11th place, then 8th place, then 6th place. And then with the Poseidon, I got 4th place off by half a point, but I won the People's Choice.
It makes me so happy to hear you say that. It was just awesome, man. It's so freaking awesome. That's what it's all about, man. That's what you got to remember, man. You know, you got to, again, that's what younger artists, younger carvers, whatever you want to say, can learn from you, from me, from anyone. And that's the only piece you need to learn. That's all you need to learn.
When I was first started, you said, listen, dude, because I remember the show got canned. And I remember like Saw Dogs, when we were done season 1, we had such big ratings. We thought we were going to have season 2. And so I was like, I'm moving home with my parents. I'm going to carve every single day. And I'm coming back on that show. And I'm not going to be an asshole anymore. I'm going to take Pete Rieger's job and I'm going to be the new manager. Even though it was all scripted, in my head, that's what I had in my head. So I remember like every day carving, and just grinding it out, making no money. I remember I sold my first bear that took like freaking 3 days for $100 and it was this big. and then it was like
brutal.
You know, like people always ask like, how do you do it? And it's, you know, you told me it's going to take 3 years and then you'll start to make real money. And I remember it was almost 3 years to the day. I went to Campbell River competition. They wanted to put me in amateur. I said, no. I went to the semi-pros. They said, or the beginners. And I was like, have you carved? They're like, no. I said, okay, I've carved more. I'm going to do more. Then I went to the amateurs and I said, how are you guys? They're like, oh, we've never really carved, blah, blah, blah. I said, okay, cool. Semi-pros, I remember going to them and being like, how about you guys? They're like, oh yeah, we're pretty good. I was like, okay, cool. I'd rather lose to you guys than beat someone. I think that I'm not a better artist by any means, because in competition, like, art is art. So you're never better than anybody, in my personal opinion. But more comfortable with a chainsaw is the way I looked at it. And I was like, you know what? I'd rather lose in semi-pro. And I remember you were like, okay, do this, get it, crush it. And me and my dad, George, we went and we stayed there the whole time, and he was there, and I remember like finishing that wizard, and I won first place. And I remember you told me, you're like, welcome to the pros, bro. And I was just like, holy shit, 3 years. I'm like, yes. And then it was like, and then it went crazy. And
yeah,
it was freaking awesome. It was like, it's been such a ride, like carving. And but my point is it's a hustle, and it's a nonstop hustle
Yeah.
for any carvers that are going to be in this, like, and new carvers. Like, you got to be ready to work your ass off, hustle your ass off, because that's
Right.
for me the biggest problem. Is like, I'm in constant fear that I'm not going to be able to put food on my
Right.
table for my daughter, and it's not as easy as everybody thinks. Everybody nowadays, carving is where it is, and you see these new kids that are like, not kids because most of them are older than me, but they are picking this up so fast, like guys like Brandon Wilson and Ryan Villers, who's gonna do this interview, I think, next week. I'm gonna have him on and pick his brain. But what do you think of like what's happening now with this new wave of chainsaw carving? What are your thoughts on it?
I think it's just an evolution, man. I mean, it really is. It's an evolution of skill and information and tools and social media again. The effect that it's had. I mean, what do you think is going to happen when all of a sudden you can see every artist in the world? I mean, it's just what it is. And then you got tools that are just wrecking balls on their own. I mean, the tools that we have now make my son do work, at 15 that I would have struggled to do it in my 20s, just even seeing great, even my 30s, because he has tools that make it so much different, so much easier and accessible.
Totally.
But, so very, very, I mean, it's just great all around, but what an evolution as far as I'm concerned.
And it's really cool to see. I mean, you get guys like Scott Dow, who's one of, like, to me, I think I'd love to pick his brain on just like his schooling. I'm going to ask him if he'll come on and do this. I hope when he watches this, he'll be inspired to come on. But I mean, for me, I love guys like Dmitry Kilimenko. You and I both know him from doing High on Ice in Fort St. John.
Right.
He is a classically trained artist, and I love talking to guys like who know that kind of stuff, where
Right.
Villers is like, this kid is new. I mean, he's older than I am, I think, but he's literally like taken all of the styles and then went like crazy on them, because he builds his own pieces, right? I don't know if you know that or not, but he does all lamination. Yeah. So it's essentially taking an ice block, but building it and carving it, and it's really cool. But then you get guys like Brandon Wilson, who is phenomenal carver. I mean, I've never met him, but his wildlife is unbelievable. I mean, everything.
Brandon's fantastic. I've met him a few times. I think it was last year, the year before on the circuit, we met up a few times. Fantastic dude, great family guy. But yeah, again, the work is just, it's Brandon Wilson. I mean, what do you say? Yeah. I mean, the guy is, when you see it, I've carved an elk before. You know what I mean? I did a life-size elk for a guy so he could mount this rack. And I remember being with Brandon at Cedar Woolley, last year, the year before, and he's doing an elk bust. And I'm like, holy shit. You're like, like, what are you even looking at? What am I looking at? You're like, and he just, it's like he's not even trying. It's freaking awesome.
That's why I'm like hoping that, you and me, we could just be the Tony Hawks of this shit. And then in like, in our own little personal bubbles, but we'll be able to look back and watch what's going on with the craziness that's going to come out. I just can't wait to see what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Like, I mean,
I like now, I look, talking about Chetwin back 10 years ago, and Karita stuck a couple pieces on, and Sheen stuck that branch on, and that was it as far as assembly. When it came to assembly, that was it. That was it. And then fast forward 5 years, just 5 years. you can't even, I mean, you look now, there's not a piece at Chetwynd that doesn't have 20 fucking pieces, you know, and you're like, what's going on? What's going on?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You're just getting, and that's what these guys are coming into. That's like, you're the same generation. What we're talking like with you and me, and you know, it's all in your own generation. But you walk into that, and that's what people like builders who walk assembly and construction is just part of the game. You know, it makes you wonder, like, where would Villers have gone if he would have maybe started this game 10, 12 years ago?
Oh, can you imagine? And now,
and if it's anything any of us could hope for, is that we are affecting the art, you know, in some way, just helping it.
Yeah. You know, it's exactly what it is. I mean, you hope we inspire, and you hope we do, but I can tell you, like, you inspired me. You've created me to be the person I am, and I can tell you, like, Ryan Villers is going to come on here in the next week or so, and I'm gonna pick his brain. And he told me that he started carving because he watched Carver King. So, you know, in a way of connection, we're all in it together, and it's really cool. Like, it's such a fun group of crazy people, and but that's awesome, man. Well, thanks so much for coming on here.
Thank you,
God
Ryan.
God only knows how long. I know it's dark now, so hopefully
I was just looking up in the corner. I was like, I know it was light when this whole thing started. That's great.
I know. So I hope some people enjoyed this, and if they get to watch it, I mean, you can find. What about yourself, Chris? How do we find you on Instagram and Facebook, and what? I know you're not a huge social media guy, but where can people find you?
You can check out most of my work on Divine Sculptures on Facebook. I got my page there, just under my name, Chris Foltz. You can see what's going on with the family, the art, the gardens, you know what I mean, stuff like that. And then Chef Chainsaw, Chris Foltz on Instagram, stuff, you know.
Nice.
That's about it.
Awesome,
that's about it.
man.
I keep it pretty low key, you know what I mean?
I love that. Yeah. Well, that's the one great thing about this has been for me tonight is I know personally that I talk to a lot of carvers, and they always tell me, they're like, you know, Chris Foltz, like, how do you know him? He's so quiet. He doesn't talk. He doesn't do this. And for me, it's like, I know the inside you, and I'm so glad you opened up and just talked tonight, because I'm sure you hated I'm sure you had anxiety about it, but I can't thank you enough, because this has been awesome. And I'm sure no matter what, if no one watches this, to me, it was awesome. And I mean, I love you, dude, and I can't thank you enough for changing my life and inspiring me to be the man I am today. And
you're great, dude. You're beautiful, man. And thanks for having me on, dude. I hope we can do it again. Good luck with Villers next week, man. Tell him I miss him, and I'm looking forward to seeing him again. And tell him thanks for the text the other day. I appreciate it, man. Happy Mother's Day to everybody out there.
Awesome, dude. Okay, everybody, thanks so much for watching the first conversation of whatever the hell I call it on Instagram, Talks with the Masters. So it's on YouTube. That's Ryan awesome. Cook Carves, Facebook.com, SawValley.com. I'm pretty sure I'm going to change everything to Ryan Cook Carves soon, because I'm kind of over Saw Valley, even though it's my company, but I'm going to start going to Ryan Cook Carves just because.
Just hitting the name, right? Just go to the
Saw
name.
Valley Ryan. I hate it when people call me Saw Valley. So cool, guys. Thanks so much. Have a great night, and thanks for watching. See you later.
Good night.